Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about a classic album I love. If 20-minute, or however long this is going to be, episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, both here on my channel and over on my Instagram. And I'm already removing this coat because, oh my god, it's July. Who did I think I was? So a few weeks back, I hosted a poll to see what album you wanted to have on the series. There were two clear frontrunners. They were within 2% of each other for the majority of the race. I had no clue what was gonna win until the very end. Magical Mystery Tour ended up winning. You got that one first. But since there was so much interest in this album, I honestly didn't expect so many people to be so interested in it. I'm deciding to cover it anyway. Both punk and glam are admittedly blind spots on Vinyl Monday. I haven't covered much of either of those. But again, there's a lot of interest, and I'm interested in covering this too. So, this week's album is Transformer by Lou Reed. Congrats to those who guessed this one. Remember, if you want to play along and see what album I'll be covering next, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post my hints. Alright, let's take the plastic off. So my copy is a repress. As you can see from the little logo up here, this is part of the Best Buy series. I have a couple other Best Buy records in my collection. I know I have a Harry Nilsson one somewhere. They sound okay. And that logo in the corner is really the only thing differing from the original intended art. This front cover photograph was taken by Mick Rock. He was a favorite of the eccentric rockers of his time. See Syd Barrett's The Madcap Laughs cover, Iggy's Raw Power, Queen 2, and Sheer Heart Attack. Whether by accident or on purpose, Mick kind of worked himself into the glam rock visual aesthetic. The negative of this front cover was accidentally overexposed and the original print was a little out of focus, but Mick thought Lou would appreciate how stark the image was, so he submitted it for consideration anyway. Mick was totally right. Lou did appreciate how stark this image is, especially in black and white like we see here. However, this effect was really hard to reproduce. It took Mick something like 10 tries to get the same effect on a print large enough for the Transformer cover. On the back cover, we have photos by Carl Stecker. He was another favorite of the glam rockers. He did quite a few Roxy Music albums, including For Your Pleasure. You know, now that I have these two covers side by side, I'm seeing a lot of similarities between these images. You get the dark background, the moody lighting, and the effect on the fabrics that almost makes them look like latex. On the left, over here, you have Gala Mitchell. She is opposite one of Lou's buddies, Ernie Tourmalin. And before you point it out, it's a banana. He shoved a banana down his pants. Having that information, it's so obvious that he did. You can even see the stem. On Transformer, we of course have Lou Reed providing vocals, playing guitar, and acting as principal lyricist. Pretty much everybody else on this record qualifies as a special guest, namely David Bowie on backing vocals, keys, guitar on Walk on the Wild Side, and Wagon Wheel. We've got some more of the Spiders from Mars on this thing, Mick Ronson on guitar, and Trevor Bolder on trumpet. And they're not the only recognizable names on here. We have Herbie Flowers of T-Rex trading off bass duty with Klaus Voormann, and Barry D'Souza, Richie Dharma, and John Halsey all playing drums. We also have the Thunder Thighs providing backing vocals. They were favorites of such freaks as Arthur Brown. This record was co-produced by David Bowie and Mick Ronson. Roll transition. So how did Lou Reed get here at arguably his most recognizable project? It comes, of course, with his other major project, The Velvet Underground, falling apart. Loaded was Lou's final record with VU. He was the last original member of the band to leave, thus myself and some other Velvet's fans consider Loaded to be the last true Velvet Underground record. We do not speak of Squeezed. Anyway, he moves home to Long Island and writes some poetry before returning back to the city and signing a deal with RCA. There, he links up with a couple of the guys from prog group Yes, of all people, to produce this self-titled record. This was not long at all before this. This was May of '72, and this would come in November. It doesn't make much of an impact, but something important happened here. Ride Into the Sun was demoed for the Velvets. It didn't make the cut for any of their projects though, but it appeared here, as did a good chunk of other VU rejects. Ride Into the Sun is my favorite song of his, by the way. He's also continuing his relationship with Andy Warhol. In '68, the Velvets consciously uncoupled from their working relationship with Warhol, but Lou stayed on good personal terms with him. For now. The lyric "Hit Me With a Flower" came from him. Lou loved it so much that he wrote it into the song Vicious. Of course, being friendly with Warhol still comes with, by association, Warhol's superstars. I mentioned Candy Darling in the VU and Nico video, but I didn't get much into her story because it's a lot more relevant here now than it was in that video. Candy was an actress from Long Island. She was always fascinated by old Hollywood glamour, and as soon as she saw her first black and white film, she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted to do. She based her look off starlets like Kim Novak, Marlene Dietrich, Mae West, and of course Jean Harlow. She even adopted these stars' beauty routines. Candy moves to New York City full-time by 1966 with an interest in being on Broadway. Instead, she meets Andy Warhol in '67. He had a love of Hollywood too, and all his greatest muses were also bottle blondes. See Edie Sedgwick and Nico. Warhol casts Ms. Darling in a few of his films. Candy never found mainstream success, and it wasn't just because of her very specific look. Candy was what we would now call a transgender woman, but Candy simply considered herself a woman, as did her colleagues, and she made her home in Warhol's world. Through the factory scene, Candy and Lou meet, and she becomes his muse. See the heartbreaking Candy Says off the VU self-titled record. Not this self-titled, or this self-titled, this self-titled. Oh my god, there are so many Velvet Underground self-titled records. And Lou has another muse in his life, his girlfriend at the time, Betty Kronstadt. He proposes to her, and not long after, writes Perfect Day about a date they went on. Now, meanwhile, over in Britain, there's this thing called glam rock happening. It celebrates theatricality, androgyny, queerness, sexuality, and all the freaks of the world. There seems to be a lot of fighting nowadays about who was glam and who was not, when glam started, and whatever. But looking back, one thing is for sure. Glam was the first mainstream rock moment to cite the Velvet Underground as an influence. These kids were marrying the flowery with the harsh, which, if you ask me, was VU's MO. These musicians included Mark Bolan of T-Rex, the guys of Mott the Hoople, and this alien-looking guy named David Bowie. This is the first time in this series that I'm properly getting into the David Bowie extended cinematic universe that was at its peak through the early to mid-70s. From this, we got the iconic and truly insane bestie trio of Bowie, Lou Reed, and Iggy Pop. God, there was so much drama in that friend group. They're all drama queens, and they're all on ungodly amounts of drugs. Bowie and Lou knew each other before this. The song Queen Bitch on the Hunky Dory record is about Lou Reed. Bowie was a deep appreciator of Lou and the Velvet Underground's work. I'm Waiting for the Man would be a mainstay of his sets through the 70s. His mainstream aha moment had just come. He is in the thick of the whole Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars thing. Once Lou had a record out with RCA and was back in New York City full-time, Bowie and one of the Spiders, Mick Ronson, are given the opportunity to produce Lou's next record. Transformer was recorded at Trident Studios in London, same studio that Ziggy was recorded at in August of '72. Lou partially continued the pattern he had going from self-titled. VU Reject Satellite of Love becomes the foundation of Transformer, but it's rearranged in a slower tempo. New York Telephone Conversation and Goodnight Ladies, two oddball numbers from VU later years, were worked into the mix as well. Now, Lou originally had this idea to do a musical adaptation, almost a rock opera, of the book A Walk on the Wild Side. This didn't make it much past the planning stages. Still, can you imagine Transformer being a rock opera, though? Instead, Lou starts writing about the lives of the people he knows. His fiancée Betty, his buddy Andy Warhol, and all his friends at the factory. The outcome is Transformer. The track listing goes as follows. Opening up side 1, we have Vicious, followed by Andy's Chest. Then Perfect Day. Next, Hangin' Around, and side 1 closes with Walk on the Wild Side. Opening up side 2, we have Makeup, followed by Satellite of Love. Then Wagon Wheel. Next, New York Telephone Conversation. Then I'm So Free, and the album closes with Goodnight Ladies. Transformer was released in November of '72 to some moderate mainstream success. It didn't break the top 20 here, but I'm surprised that it charted in the US at all. It did crack the top 20 in the UK, though. Walk on the Wild Side with Perfect Day on the B-side was the only single throughout Lou's entire solo career to chart, which is so interesting to me, seeing as the song's lyrical content prevented it from getting much radio play at all. Lou takes the show on the road through the end of '72 into '73, and it is a time. In one of the more nonsensical, unhinged moves of his career, he hires some bar band to back him on the Transformer tour. Then he, of course, promptly discovers why they're a bar band, has them all fired, and replaced with more skilled musicians. I'm not sure what he thought was gonna happen, but okay. And he marries Betty. The follow-up record, Berlin, has some clear thematic roots in Lou and Betty's volatile relationship. In the years following Transformer, Lou blows up pretty much every interpersonal relationship he had, most notably his working relationship with Bowie. Sadly, a year and a half after Transformers' release, at just 29 years old, Candy Darling dies. It's suspected that her cancer was caused by the early form of hormones she was taking to transition. Remember, this was 50 years ago, and medicine has come a long way since then. Hormones are safe, and hormone blockers are safe and totally reversible. Candy's memory lives on. She was the muse of St. Vincent's 2021 record, Daddy's Home. 3 things I want to point out about this record while I have the time. 1, St. Vincent's whole look for this era was inspired by Candy's old Hollywood glamour. Number 2, interesting that another record about Candy is packaged in black, white, and yellow. And 3, this record is phenomenal. I keep trying to find the space to properly talk about it on this channel, and I just can't, but I really wish I could. Candy is my favorite of all of Warhol's superstars, and she deserved so much better than the life she had. It was really her connection to Transformer that inspired me to cover this thing in the first place. So I'm gonna send off this section of the video with the campiest, most glamorous transition I can possibly think of, and then we'll get into what I think about Transformer. As a Velvet Underground girly, I believe Lou Reed is one of the most fascinating characters in rock and roll history. Few were quite as multifaceted, instigatory, complicated, divisive, or as iconic as him, and even fewer held his level of influence without ever really enjoying mainstream success. Sure, he collaborated with big names like The Killers, the Gorillaz, spearheaded by Damon Albarn of Blur, and, of course, Metallica. And if Lou hadn't died the morning she'd flown to New York City to see him, he would have collaborated with Lana Del Rey. I'm serious. His death was announced while she was on the tarmac at JFK. Lou was like the anti-David Bowie. Dark Bowie. Whereas Bowie knew how to sing and for a good chunk of his career just chose not to, Lou never bothered with the singing. Part of his charm was how he more so talked you through a song. That being said, Bowie's influence on Transformer is so obvious that I caught onto it before doing even an inkling of research for this video. When I first heard Satellite of Love, I even thought, hey, is that David Bowie on vocals? But initially, I thought no, because it wasn't quite enough. How do I do this? Oh. I must have still had hunky-dory era Bowie in mind there. We are firmly in Ziggy territory by this time. Man, I really need to redo the Ziggy episode. Once I picked up on the polish Bowie put on the Transformer material, I could not unhear it. That's not a bad thing at all, though. It holds this stuff together. I think Bowie's influence was why this was Lou's most commercially successful album. Also apparent on Transformer is Andy Warhol's influence. He came up with that "Hit Me With a Flower" line in Vicious. Andy's chest is named after him. The back cover banana boner. I cannot believe I said that in a Vinyl Monday. I swear to God, that is a completely original sentence. I don't think any of those words had been combined in a sentence before I just said it there. This banana, oh my God, could be a hidden reference to the Warhol-made VU and Nico banana cover. Quite a few of the Warhol superstars are name-dropped on Walk on the Wild Side. You have Holly Woodlawn, Joe D'Alessandro, Joe Campbell, Jackie Curtis, and, of course, Candy Darling. I'd argue she's the muse of this whole album. Even the title, Transformer. There wasn't the word for transgender when Candy was alive. She was simply a woman. She transformed into her true self, and that's how she lived out the rest of her short life. In case you couldn't already tell, this is the Transphobes Fuck Off episode of Vinyl Monday. Transformer is also a nod to drag. You transform yourself from one gender presentation to another. The act of doing so is like a ritual. Hell, I feel like I'm in drag for these videos. This is a lot of makeup, but it's really good for me, not just for artistic presentation. Dressing for a theme is a lot of fun, but in the sense that I get some separation between Abigail DeVoe, the persona, and Abby, the person. I take comfort in knowing that none of you would ever recognize me while out running errands, because you haven't really seen my glasses except for that Abigail-thany DeVoe Tano bit, and you've never seen my natural hair. We start with Vicious, maybe the most VU-coded moment here. Skittery, unstable guitar solos, and there's a spectacular feeling of haste that the Velvet Underground did so well. It's like Lou is slowly getting himself worked up throughout the song, finishing with those yelps of, "Finish this!" Andy's Chest, however, was the first track that made me notice the Bowie polish. The contrast between the finish and Lou's irreverent delivery is intriguing. It's like he doesn't want to be here, but everybody else does. Oh my god, that's it! That's Transformer in a sentence! What's the point in saying anything else? Roll outro! Bullshit! That's the end. I haven't talked about one of the greatest songs ever written. It's just 22 lines, if my math is right. If you've been around here long, you'll know that it's often not. 59 unique words, 2 verses, 2 of the chorus, and the outro. There's nothing grand happening in the narrative, no soaring instrumental or particularly impressive vocal performance, just the story of a mundane but perfect day, presumably on the come down of a drug binge, and some really great strings. Perfect Day is a very naturalistic picture of love. It's unusually vulnerable and not spiky for Lou. He's not known for being expressive with his voice, but the desperation we hear when he repeats "you just keep me hanging on" is palpable. Over the years, I've latched on to the line, "I thought I was someone else, someone good." Lou Reed was a deeply complex guy. He was far from a saint. In fact, he could be a real dick. Substance abuse, mental health struggles, struggling with his own sexuality, and the trappings of fame, they all exacerbated that. Perfect Day is the story of a simple romantic day, but that which is used to distract yourself from confronting your own faults. Maybe the whole relationship is being used as that distraction. I also latch on to the repetition of "you're gonna reap what you sow." It's like he knew he was gonna screw this thing up with Betty. He warned himself, and he didn't heed his own warning. Like it often is with the genius types, Lou Reed's own worst enemy was Lou Reed. In the words of the muse of this song, Betty Kronstad, love between two consenting adults is never easy, always complex. The beauty of Perfect Day lies in its apparent simplicity with that undercurrent of unrest, darkness even. By the way, Caro Emerald's cover, fantastic. It was actually my first exposure to this song. Then we have Hangin' Round. I swear to God, I have heard the line, "You're still doing things I gave up years ago," somewhere before. Can someone please help me out here? I was shocked to learn this song wasn't a single. It's got the most mainstream appeal of everything here. It's a great romp. It's punchy, oddly catchy for someone as out there as Lou Reed. It's great fun. On the flip side, we have Walk on the Wild Side. This became somewhat of Lou's signature song. For the lyrics, I am shocked that this song was the big one on the record. The only other song explicitly about a trans woman that I can think of from this era is Lola by the Kinks, which, funny enough, might have been inspired by Ms. Darling too. I love that through the vignettes Lou gives in Walk on the Wild Side, the phrase "walk on the wild side" isn't so much an invitation to partake. It's an acknowledgement of those who already do. It's like a secret code for all these characters. Take the line "looking for soul food and a place to eat." You don't learn about this world from books, you simply learn from being in it. For its sound, however, I'm not surprised Walk on the Wild Side was the hit. It has this beautiful smoky warmth to it, thanks to the backing vocals by the Thunder Thighs and that saxophone. Opening up the second side of this record, we have Makeup. Without the tuba, this song would be a link to all the 90s alt groups that fucking worshipped VU and this record. But there is a tuba. We take a hard left turn into the territory of camp. Camp is inherently queer. You could call any of Warhol's superstars, camp icons, even Warhol himself. I love Makeup more than most. The song is a celebration of the ritual and the joy of makeup. Brightly colored eyeshadows, hyperpigmented blush, pancake foundation, shiny lip gloss. Makeup is for everyone, and it's so much fun. We also get my favorite ever Lou Reed ad-lib, this little ooh. It's the most personality we get from him this whole time. Listen, it's really hard not to compare Transformer to Bowie. I have seen people online saying that this record might as well be a Bowie album. I do not agree with that. However, Satellite of Love is the most Bowie-coded moment on here. Lou never would have added the recorder, or the sax on Walk on the Wild Side for that matter, but the recorder is part of the offbeat eclecticism, and that is all Lou. This song reaches these soaring heights that we don't get anywhere else on the record, and we don't really get anywhere else across Lou's discography. I don't know, I just think this is a fascinating song when you look at it against the rest of the album's material. Wagon Wheel is where my interest in this record starts to waver, though. The focus starts to shift to the skit-type song New York Telephone Conversation. It's camp as fuck. I can see the routine in my mind, a few heavily made-up performers in drag with lots and lots of feathers, the fur that was too hot for me to wear here through the majority of this video because it's July, and they are just hamming it up through this thing. From here on, this record becomes a lot less glam rock and a lot more artsy. However, I'm Free is another rocker, but with this tonal shift, this placement in the album, it doesn't quite work as well as the others do. This is where Bowie's influence starts to become stifling to Lou's writing as opposed to highlighting it. And finally, we have the closer, Goodnight Ladies. On the surface, it's a silly novelty track based around a quote from a quote. But then I consider the instrumentation, the big brass band, and the way Lou bids farewell to his captive-ish audience. I see Goodnight Ladies as an ode to vaudeville. Oh my god, the choreography practically writes itself. Give me a cane and a top hat. Transformer is a weird but cool intersection of glam and what we'd come to know as punk. If you ask me, the two might not be so far apart. They share that same sense of defiance which Lou always had. He even bordered on combative. Hell, if you look at the clothes the MC5 were wearing when they arguably accidentally invented punk, they lean a lot more towards what we might consider glam. I feel like Mark Bolan saw a photo of Rob Tyner and his shiny Disco Pirates shirts and that gorgeous hair somewhere and was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do. I struggle to call Transformer Lou's best solo work. It's his most concise artistic statement, sure, and it's the one with the most mainstream appeal, and I'm struggling not to conflate that with best. This album, overall, is a celebration of queerness. Then, when you consider who made it, a complicated guy with a deeply complex relationship with his own sexuality, this thing becomes even more remarkable. Transformer celebrates all of society's outsiders, from all walks of life, from muse to sex worker, saint to druggie, and everything in between. But they are not outsiders here. For 36 minutes, all of the unabashed freaks of the world, proud freaks, take center stage, and we are the outsiders of this dark, seedy, sparkling, exclusive club. My personal favorites off this one are Vicious, Perfect Day, Hangin' Round, Walk on the Wild Side, and Satellite of Love. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. I'm gonna put this back on for the sake of the outro, because it didn't get its time in the spotlight when it really should have. I'll bring it back for a Rolling Stones video or something. And with that, that is it. That is Lou Reed's Transformer. What do you think of this album? What do you think of Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground? Whatever relating to this record. You should let me know in the comments. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums I love. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye! Hold on, I should...